Hello, and thanks for tuning into the show that goes around the continent to bring you stories near and far. I'm Joke Rogers at Channels Television here in Lagos, and I'm joined by Vincent Makori from the Voice of America in Washington, D.C.
Thanks, I'm Vincent Makori at the Voice of America. Happy to be with you again for another edition of Africa 54. Let's start off with the latest from Nigeria. Joke Rogers in Lagos brings you that story.
The federal government plans to roll out more palliatives for Nigerians as part of measures to cushion the impact of the present economic downturn and to make it reach those it's meant for. The authorities say 20% of the palliatives will be routed through traditional and faith-based institutions. Vice President Kashim Shettima hinted this at the one-day high-level dialogue of faith leaders on nutrition in Nigeria. Our State House correspondent, Empress Simon, reports.
His Excellency.
The devastating effect of malnutrition in Nigeria is what this gathering of medical professionals, government agencies and traditional rulers seek to discuss.
Your Excellency, the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Vice President Kashim Shettima is the special guest of honor, and he explains that the welfare of the ordinary citizens is a top priority to the current government.
Advancing nutrition.
Prominent religious and traditional leaders are also in attendance, an indication that the current economic situation is not for government alone to handle, but a challenge that needs everyone's attention.
Imagine 4 out of Nigerian children who are stunted, whose cognitive capability is detracted because of malnutrition, and what it means for the future prosperity of this country.
While religious and traditional leaders give their support to the cause, the former CBN governor and chairman Nutrition Society of Nigeria, His Royal Highness Sanusi Lamido, says the root factors responsible for malnutrition and hunger need to be addressed.
We will work hand in hand with the Accelerating Nutrition Resource in Nigeria project and other stakeholders to ensure that our congregations are educated about and engaged in improving nutrition.
The governments at all levels have a very big task. But you don't tell somebody to eat a balanced diet when he can't even find simple food to eat. So feeding people is very important. Keeping our farms safe for farmers is very important because they have to produce food.
People, especially those who have low income, must learn to manage the size of their family.
In the aftermath of fuel subsidy removal, the federal government rolled out palliatives for vulnerable Nigerians. However, some religious leaders here feel left out in the distribution process, a situation which Vice President Kashim Shettima notes that it will be addressed as the government plans another phase of palliative distribution and a school feeding program.
The President has approved that 20% of the palliatives in terms of food intervention be routed through our religious organizations and the traditional institutions. The Sangaya schools, the mission schools will be specially targeted for such interventions.
The Vice President also launches the Accelerating Nutrition Resource in Nigeria Sermon Guides and Faith Perspectives on Nutrition. From the Presidential Villa, Empress Simon, Channels Television News.
Thank you, Your Excellency, the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Joining us to discuss the federal government's palliatives to Nigerians through faith-based institutions is the CEO, Center for Communication and Social Impact, Babafunke Fagbemi. Thank you for joining us today on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
What do you think influenced the federal government's decision to employ the use of traditional and faith-based institutions in rolling out more palliatives to Nigerians?
The federal government's decision to do this is actually based on its intention to develop human capital and develop human capital in a way that is more accountable and can guarantee results. And as we know, the faith-based leaders are actually close to the communities. They know the people at the grassroots. They know where the shoe pinches them the most. And channeling some of these palliatives through the faith-based leaders can guarantee more accountability and make sure that the people that need these welfare packages are actually getting them. And again, let's not forget the connection between human capital development and spirituality. And a lot of people trust the faith-based leaders. They trust them to do the right thing. And we are sure that doing this will actually give the federal government some results. And so the federal government is doing this, leveraging on evidence that faith-based leaders have been implementing initiatives that have actually been generating and yielding extremely great results over time.
Right, and from what you can tell, there are so many faith-based organizations. How is the federal government, streamlining its research on the faith-based institutions that it wants to use to extend the palliatives to the people?
The federal government is streamlining its research by working through programs that have recognized the faith-based institutions and traditional institutions that are actually reputable and are close to the grassroots. So a very good example is the Accelerating Nutrition Results in Nigeria that is working directly with faith-based leaders who have been mapped in the states of intervention, who are reputable, and the evidence has proven that they are indeed close to the populace. So irrespective of where they are from, their structure, the denominations, or the faith structures, I mean, they still get close to the communities.
And, a lot of things transpired during that event with the Vice President Kashim Shettima, where it was announced that faith-based institutions and traditional institutions will be used for palliative. The issue of malnutrition was a major factor that brought this up. What are the major factors responsible for malnutrition in the country, and why is it so, concentrated in some major areas and not others?
Malnutrition is an issue that affects everyone, but most especially it affects the vulnerable groups. And then in terms of the vulnerable groups, you have the children under 5, you have women of reproductive age, especially women who are pregnant. And the issue of malnutrition is definitely one that is quite impactful and needs to be taken seriously. So for example, statistics does tell us that 45% of children deaths, children under 5, are attributable to women and children being undernourished. And not just that, you also have stunting and wasting. 32% of children under 5 actually are stunted, and 6.5%, close to 7% of these children under 5 also experience wasting. And taking that back, looking at the broader picture, you also have the impact of malnutrition on the socioeconomic structure, on GDP losses in Nigeria. So it is also said that annually, Nigeria experiences $1.5 billion loss in GDP due to multivitamin and nutrient deficiencies, while annually in Nigeria, more than 11% of its GDP is lost to issues around stunting. So yes, the federal government is right in making sure that this issue of malnutrition is given the attention that it deserves.
CEO, Center for Communication and Social Impact, Babafunke Fagbemi, a pleasure having you again on the program today.
Thank you very much for having me.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. After the break, digitizing the country's history, a Nigerian non-profit applauds newspapers at the year Nigeria gained independence until today. Welcome back to Africa 54. I'm Vincent McCory in Washington. One Nigerian nonprofit is on a mission to digitize the country's history. They are doing so by uploading old copies of newspapers from 1960, the year Nigeria gained independence, until today. Timothy Obiezu has more from Lagos.
Page by fragile page, these old Nigerian newspapers are being scanned and uploaded to a back-end server. It's part of a project started by former Nigerian journalist Fuad Lawal. He says the idea came to him when he was working in a newsroom years ago.
When you want to find answers and like build context for your stories, it's hard to find archival stuff. I'm very sure you struggle to find archival footage about Nigeria. In our case, it's hard to find like even like just basic information. And so the question became like, what would it look like if we tried to make all of this history accessible?
But not just accessible to people. Lawal also wants to use all this data to make sure African stories are a part of any artificial intelligence base of knowledge.
We are at the dawn of a new information age by way of AI. And when you use like these tools, these AI tools, one of the things you quickly learn is that African information is grossly underrepresented, right? It is barely right about anything in the context of Nigeria.
This project hopes to change that. The server currently holds more than 60,000 pages of what could become Nigeria's first interactive digital newspaper archive. Historic events across 6 decades, including military coups, civil war, and notable elections, have so far been captured. The project has attracted nearly $40,000 in donations and is driven by volunteers like Boyega Taiwo.
I joined archiving in April last year, so almost a year now. We come here every day, we scan, we catalog, we log on our Notion just to track progress and uploading on the AWS. Coming here every day, flipping through pages, it just helps, it does something, it helps, I think, knowledge, right? Like there's a lot of things that we've learned.
Once all the material is online, Lawal says AI-powered tools such as language translation apps, grammar checkers, and speed recognition software will have access to information about Nigeria that has never been online before.
But we believe that by digitizing these old newspapers, we're basically taking like dark data, that is data that is inaccessible, and we're digitizing it and making it more accessible. Last
September, the nonprofit launched the first collection of documents and is currently trying to raise $100,000 to expand. Timothy Obiezu, VOA News, Lagos, Nigeria.
When natural disasters such as flood, drought, hurricanes, and heat waves occur, the impact is usually devastating. Even though some of these situations cannot be completely avoided, discussions are on how to reduce the impact on humanity. This formed part of discussions when concerned environmentalists met in Lagos. Our correspondent Kelly Egiga reports.
It's a gathering of researchers from tertiary institutions such as Lead Center University, Ibadan, the University of Lagos, the Nigerian Institute of Social and Economic Research, government representatives, the private sector, and media for the Lagos Inception Meeting, a project facilitated by Palm Trees Nigeria. In their opening remarks, organizers outlined the essence of the project to include influence climate risk policies and practices impacting those on the margins across regions in the continent.
The strongest point of this project is that it's going to look at things from the perspective of the margins. Who are the margins? Of course, you know what I'm talking about. The homeless, the women, the widow, and those who ordinarily, their voices don't count when it comes to policy.
For others, governments at all levels must pay attention to environment-friendly policies, but more importantly, implement findings by researchers.
The main concern, as far as I'm concerned, is the issue of the adoption and utilization of research findings for policy design and implementation. I would say it is not peculiar to NISA and other research institutes. It is also common among institutions that are involved in research, particularly the universities.
There is also a word of caution for Nigerians.
We need a behavioral shift. There are natural forces of extreme events, the ones that are coming just because the way the nature is reacting. But they are being amplified because of our mismanagement of environmental resources, our misbehavior of managing our waste.
Facilitators of the Palm Trees project say they aim to create transformative climate information tools by including stakeholders and communities in a transdisciplinary research approach to support equitable resilience strategies across 6 countries in Africa. Kelly Egiga, Channels Television News.
The World Health Organization says that in Zambia, over 70% of men and over 30% of women are drinking too much, too often. Some non-profit organizations are intervening to help those on the path to recovery from alcohol addiction. Kathy Short reports from Lusaka, Zambia.
49-year-old businessman Bellington Shanzi started drinking beer casually as a teenager, but he says he quickly became addicted to alcohol.
My family and relationships were broken because it would lead to, little time with, I'm a married man, little time with family, little time with even, your own siblings and everything. You shun everything. Your budget is distorted. In the end, your life just becomes, centered on alcohol. You become selfish.
Bellington has just completed a 3-month alcohol recovery program at Serenity Wellness Center, which focuses on providing medicine and therapeutic solutions. The program costs $245 per month over a 3-month period. This price tag is beyond the reach of most Zambians, where the average salary is between $300 and $350 per month. The fees cater for logistics like food, medicines, and administrative costs for alcohol recovery participants during the program. For those who cannot afford it or are also grappling with mental health issues, the center offers some free services.
Almost every shopping mall has alcohol, almost in every shop. So people have this opportunity, they are able to buy at any point, at every small instance, every corner in Zambia as a spot where alcohol is being sought.
Chikontwe says that an average of 7 people turn up for help at Serenity every day, and he says his center is helping about 60% of the people that go through the program, while 40% relapse. 38-year-old Musonda Kahenya also says he has completed his alcohol recovery program. He has been sober for a few months now.
Because of the heavy drinking, I started missing days from work, losing jobs. Then later on, started having a lot of bills in bars. I overdrink what I can afford. So it became quite a burden, especially on my family members.
In 2018, the country enacted a national alcohol policy that sets opening hours for bars and restricts sales in markets and shopping malls. It prohibits consumption by people under the age of 18. But Chikontwe says that policy isn't being enforced and points to media reports indicating that 42% of alcohol consumers are between the ages of 13 and 15. Chikontwe says his organization is working closely with the government to urgently fine-tune the national alcohol policy.
So, like in other policies, we need to sensitize the population based on the existence of this policy, but as well as on the content.
Zambia's Health Minister Sylvia Masebo told VOA that they recognize the problem and says the government will prosecute those ignoring the national alcohol policy. But activists say that's not enough and are calling for tougher measures like fast-tracking the prosecution of offenders to send a clear message. Kathy Short, VOA News, Lusaka, Zambia.
Nigeria and Cameroon have sealed a conservation agreement on transboundary ecosystems conservation as part of efforts aimed at addressing food insecurity and wildlife trafficking. At the ceremony in Abuja, the Minister of Environment, Mr. Balarabe Abbas, says both countries must adopt a holistic approach to tackle common enemies.
Officials of Nigeria's Ministry of Environment are meeting a delegation from the Ministry of Forestry and Wildlife of the Republic of Cameroon for the signing of an agreement for sustainable management of forestry and wildlife resources. The Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Environment opens the meeting with a call for collective capacity to combat climate change.
Without any doubt, through this agreement, we will achieve one, enhance our collective capacity to combat climate change.
The ministers highlight the need for effective collaboration as they both pledge commitment to this accord.
We need all these donor agencies, we need all these friendly countries that have been supporting us in the area of trying to address wildlife crimes, environmental crimes, and other similar malaise in the forest. Let me at this juncture point out that signing this agreement today is just the beginning, because agreements are supposed to be implemented. So after signing this agreement, we are going to follow up with a number of actions that will address the issue that have been provided within the framework.
I hereby urge all parties involved in this process to be more committed in the implementation of this instrument. Rest assured that the government of Cameroon will endeavor to do everything possible at the level to implement the agreement.
The dialogue climaxes with the signing of a memorandum of understanding on transboundary ecosystems conservation and sustainable management of forestry and wildlife resources.
A Kenyan manufacturer is helping students from poor families access laboratory classes. The manufacturer is making cheaper mobile laboratories that are solar-powered. At least 1,000 schools in remote areas have acquired the labs.
If you are not able to capture the clear...
Paul Githaiga is a teacher at Kenya's Utawala Academy. For much of his career as a science teacher, he made do with theoretical lessons. Githaiga says setting up laboratories was out of reach for the schools where he taught.
Most of the items that were there, they were only be found in books as diagrams, pictures, and a teacher may not be able even to demonstrate and to show that this is what is being taught in the course book.
But the introduction of this mobile laboratory stirred up science lessons and students' research projects. The labs are built from locally sourced materials like timber, are fitted with wheels for mobility, and have solar power for users in schools with limited or no power supply. Schools can purchase the labs for about $1,000 US. The manufacturer School Equipment Production Unit, or SEPU, says it's a distinct difference from the nearly $20,000 US it costs to construct and equip a permanent laboratory.
I can just adjust the temperature.
Students like John Mokaya are often shut out.
I got to understand many things, of which in grade 7 we used just to see from the books, but now you can have the real experience, how everything works, and due to this you can be great people in future.
SEPU says they're easily adaptable as they are made in Kenya. CEO Joel Mabonga told VOA they are designed with understanding of the local teacher, unlike imports.
It understands the dynamics of our education. It understands the teacher training of a Kenyan. Unlike if we got an innovation from outside, which we need to come and adopt it for the local environment. This is a solution that is born from within, and therefore it is going to spur more thinking. And we're even thinking of other ways that we can be able to improve it.
Over 500 mobile labs have been distributed to schools both in rural and urban areas. Schools can pay in installments and get a refill of chemicals needed periodically, sales manager Alan Weche says.
The mobile laboratory is coming with accompaniments, such as the microscope. We've got assorted chemicals to be able to support the teachers and the learners to be able to do various experiments. We've got also assorted glasswares. And in terms of safety measures, it is also supplied with a fire extinguisher.
Education costs are the most commonly reported financial worry in Kenya and nearly a dozen other sub-Saharan countries, according to the World Bank. But with such innovations, authorities believe that those worries can be lessened. Victoria Amunga, VOA News, Nairobi.
Well, and that's our show for today. You can find all the continent's top news and world news online at voaafrica.com. Check it out. I'm Vincent McCory in Washington. Channels Television has our last word.
We look forward to bringing you another show next week. To remember that channelstv.com is your source for news and other programming. I'm Joke Rogers. Thanks for watching and goodbye.